Hi there. Welcome back to another episode of Menopause Reimagined. I'm your host, Andrea Donsky, and today we are going to be talking about forever chemicals, or something called an acronym called PFAS. You may have heard about it on social media. It has become a very trendy topic, and chances are you have heard of it. And these are chemicals that last forever in our environment. They linger and they're ubiquitous. So I asked today's guest to come on and share her story because when I think about an expert in this area, I think of Leah, who is our guest today, and we've known each other for a long time. She's an old friend of mine. We both pretty much grew up in the health and wellness space together and spent a lot of time together over the years. And although I'm not in that space anymore, she still is an absolute incredible watchdog for the industry in terms of making sure that we are getting safer products for us and our families. Now, before I introduce Leah and myself, I want to ask if you can do me a really big favor. I know many of you have done this already, which I'm super grateful for. If you can go and fill out our signs and symptoms survey. So this is the original survey that we launched about a year and a half ago or 2 years on our website. And we have over 4,300 people that have responded to this. So the reason I'm asking you to do this for me today is because I want to get to 5,000 responses. Once I get to 5,000, we're going to reanalyze the data. And I'm so excited to see how it changed, if it changed. So I need your help to do that though. So we're only missing about 700 responses. So if you could share it, do it yourself. It takes under a minute. If you've already responded and already answered it, please do not do it again. We just want to make sure that everyone answers it once. But if you could share it with your friends, family members, colleagues, whoever, anybody that you know who is in perimenopause or menopause over the age of 35, I would be very grateful. And thank you so much to those of you who answered our doctor's visit survey, because we now have, I think it's over 1,100 responses, and we analyzed the data of that one, and I cannot wait to share it with you. So I have a lot of exciting things coming up in the very near future that I'll be sharing with you. But first, I need your help to please complete the signs and symptoms survey. So for those of you who are new to me and my podcast, I'm Andrea Donsky. I'm a nutritionist for almost 20 years. I'm a menopause educator and a menopause researcher. And I'm also the co-founder of a company called wearemorphus.com. And we empower you to take control of your health and symptoms of perimenopause and menopause with nutrition, lifestyle, supplements, and research. So today I'm speaking with Leah Segedie. She helps women make safer consumer choices for their families. She's a consumer watchdog, author, activist, community organizer, and strategist. Leah founded the award-winning consumer activist website, Mamavation.com, and I'm going to put links to her website and to her investigations, which you'll hear about in our interview below, so you can access it really easily. And she also founded the leading eco-friendly influencer conference called ShiftCon Social Media Conference. And back in 2018, it was her first year that she had the conference. I actually won the award for Shifter of the Year, which I was extremely grateful for. So that was really cool. She also wrote Green Enough, Eat Better, Live Cleaner, Be Happier, all without driving your family crazy, to democratize scientific findings and help families make safer and greener product choices. So get ready, grab a cup of tea. If you have one, if you're driving, well, turn up the volume, because here's Leah. Welcome to Menopause Reimagined, Leah.
Hey, Andrea, it's good to see you again.
It is so good to see you. So Leah and I have been friends for a very long time. We were catching up ages. It's like we're the OGs in the health and wellness space. And I am so happy that you are coming back on our podcast and talking about a topic that is so current. It's out there everywhere. You hear about it, PFAS, forever chemicals. And I remember you were one of the first people that were even, you were like talking about it. You were like, I'm putting this on the map. You were doing all the research. And now, Leah, I see it everywhere. And I always tag you every time I see it. I'm like, Leah was talking about it first, to give you that cred. But I thought it would be a good topic to get into today, to talk about what it is. And then also, how can we avoid it if we can? How can we detox it? How can we, because, for everything that we talk about, because it can be scary, I want to make sure we have solutions. And that's the important thing, which you are the queen of both. So let's get started just with a quick definition of what are forever chemicals.
Okay, so I'm going to break this down and make it as simple as possible for everybody, because this is a really complicated topic. Now, first of all, the reason why I've been talking about this for a very long time is because my advisors have been talking about this for a very long time. My main advisor, Pete Myers, literally coined the phrase endocrine disrupting chemicals, and he has been organizing scientists behind the scenes, working with European Union, working with scientists all over the country and the world on these types of topics. So he brought this to my attention, I would say 7, 8 years ago, and then just made it really clear to me, Leah, you really have to start doing some major work here because we need help. We need to get this out. The quicker it gets to the public, the faster everyone's job is going to be. So that's why I have been on this parade or whatever, or what have you for a really long time. Okay. So back up. PFAS forever chemicals, they're referred PFAS, perfluorinated oxyl substances. It's got this long word. It's essentially 15,000 chemicals, 15000 plus 15,000 chemicals in commerce.
It's crazy.
that are about stain resistance, water resistance, grease resistance. So you've had these chemicals in your life for a really long time. Things like, oh my God, don't call me right now. Things like stain resistant carpet, stain resistant clothing, Teflon pans, things like that you know what these chemicals are. It's just that you thought about them in a different realm, right? So most of us have had Teflon pans in the past. That's the non-stick pans. They work great with eggs and stuff like that. However, what you didn't know was that it's a fluoropolymer that is considered a PFAS. And these chemicals are called forever chemicals because they do not go away. They literally do not degrade. They are like the strongest bond in nature. They're really awesome to do things like repel water, repel grease, repel stains, but they're really toxic to our body, incredibly toxic to our body because they don't go away. They're really hard to detox out. They build up in your body. They don't go anywhere. And depending on what type of chemical they are, of those 15,000 I referred to, it could be months or it could be for decades. So that's how long it would take to get these chemicals out of your body, but you're constantly replacing them. So we're just never getting rid of them.
Right.
Now, in the environment, they don't go anywhere. When they get into the water supply, they're very difficult to get out of the water. They're getting into the water supply constantly. When they get into manufacturing, they're really hard to get out. When they get into the food supply, it's a complete nightmare. So what I've been doing for the past, since about 2019, is doing studies testing for indications of these chemicals so I can educate the public on which brands are doing a great job of avoiding these chemicals, and not just the chemicals themselves, but the contamination points, and which ones are not, and make it easy for, everybody be able to avoid them. Use your money to give resources to the brands that are avoiding these chemicals versus the ones that are not. So back up a little bit, 15,000 of these chemicals, ubiquitous in the supply chain. So this is not a matter of I can get rid of all the PFAS in my life. Unfortunately, that is not the case.
Right.
This is a matter of I can decrease the levels in my life, right? That is what our goal is, and that's a realistic goal. So don't in your mind think you're going to be able to get rid of them. You can't. It's impossible. Nobody can. 99.9% of people have this in their blood. So if you went and got tested, if I've been tested, I have it in my blood. I can tell
I'm
you
sure everybody does. I mean, who doesn't use, everybody,
including the Amish, including the polar bears, including places that don't have PFAS, have it because it's gotten into the water and it's gotten its way up into the Arctic, and it's now in like polar bears and, Arctic animals. It's everywhere. Okay. It's really, really bad. I'm going to list off some of the things that, it's linked to. This is the part where you're going to have to take a deep breath with me.
So before you do that, actually, I just want to ask you one thing. So you're saying about the levels. So does everyone have different levels of it in the
Yes.
body? And does certain levels getting to a top, like getting to a level where it becomes like that, dangerous level? Or is it even for some people, even smaller levels? Like I want to be, I know it's a hard question to ask and I probably know the answer, but I think it would be an important one to do because you would mention that, trying to minimize the intake of it. But it's hard to get the outtake. Is it just like building up, I guess?
So the answer is it's different for everybody, and that's the truth of the matter. To some person, you could have a lot in your body and your body wouldn't react, and to another person, they would be sick with cancer and all kinds of other things. So
Right.
it really is a matter of it depends on you.
Yeah.
Um, it varies across the country in different areas. So like if you have PFAS in your water supply, you're probably going to have a lot more in your
Mm,
body. If you're
right.
exposed to it through industry, like let's say you live next to a printing press, right? A big
Right.
manufacturing printing press. It would get into the air. If you live right next to it, you would probably have higher
Right.
levels. Things like
Right.
that, you would see stuff like that, or unless you're exposed to it based on things that you're purchasing, consuming, drinking, eating. If for some reason you're purchasing a peanut butter and that peanut butter and you eat it every day, and or your coffee that you eat every day and it's high in this and these type of chemicals, you're going to be consuming more than the average person. Yes.
Okay.
So
I understand.
that's why my investigations, and I've done 25 of them in different categories, are so important. And that's why my advisors are so excited to be part of all of the investigations that I do. And they work for free for me because they're amazing. Because this is important work. It's really
Oh,
important work.
your investigations are amazing. We're going to get into that. I want you to talk all about them because I always say, and Leah and I are good friends. So I'll tell her, I'm like, you're fearless. You're like amazing. She's just like, you're so, and I remember way back when we were both kind of working in the natural and organic and health world. Now I'm in the menopause world, still I still have my background, but I've kind of veered away from it from Naturally Savvy. I kind of now I only do Morphus. But even then, you were like, I'm taking on organic companies, I'm taking on natural companies. I don't care. I am all about the transparency and I want to make sure we're getting the best options possible. So I do want you to talk about that. But first, I'll let you go back to what it's linked to, and
Oh,
then we'll
fantastic.
go on. Yeah, and then we'll go on to the investigations.
So the biggest thing you need to worry about is your immune system. The most difficult thing about PFAS is it lowers the immune system. And so everything that goes along with a lowered immune system are problems that you will see. So a secondary thing that they found is, whether you get vaccinated or you don't get vaccinated, because it's lowering your immune system, if you get vaccinated, regardless of what kind, it makes those vaccinations less likely to work. And they
Oh,
know that from
oh wow. So it makes it work. You're
testing
saying it makes
babies.
it less effective, is what you're saying.
Right.
So no matter what, oh wow.
So, and that was one of the crazy things that they don't tell you, right? So it's like
Wow.
if they're talking, in during COVID, and they're talking about all these vaccinations, I'm like, man, worry about the PFAS. You need to be doing it
Mm,
simultaneously. If our government did that, they would have less problems with vaccine effectiveness overall. But that's
interesting.
not something they focus on right now, which I find is really ironic, but what have you. So increased risk. So these are a lot of things with children. Because if it lowers your immune system when you're in utero, so your mother is exposed when she's pregnant, very likely to various levels. And because when you're in utero, very specific things with hormones have to happen at very specific times. And if those things don't happen, stuff just goes nuts, right, inside your body. And so
Hmm.
it's linked to all kinds of things. So more likely to
Like,
have allergies as a child, more
okay.
likely to have asthma as a child, more likely to affect the growth and learning, the IQ of children, behavior issues,
Wow.
autism, all kinds of stuff are impacted by these PFAS chemicals in utero and when you're outside of the womb as well. It increases cholesterol levels for adults, metabolic diseases like obesity and diabetes. It's also linked to this as well. Yes, this
Well,
can make you fat. Hello, and you're not even eating any calories, and it can make you
the
fat.
obesogens, right? Which I do want you to talk
It's
about.
a
So I remember
classified obesogen,
obesogens,
100%.
and you'll
And it's
explain
an
what that means because that's a term that many people may not understand what that means. So I do want you to define it.
there's a classified obesogen is a series of like I want to say 16 chemicals or chemical classes that they found that are linked to a rise in diabetes and obesity. So that means it makes you fat. There's
Hmm.
not one way that it does it, but here's an example of how an obesogen can make make you fat. It can turn bone cells into fat cells in your body. It can literally manipulate the type of cell that you have, turning it into a fat cell. And that can be one avenue. It can lower your metabolism and make it like incredibly, incredibly slow. And you're just a normal person and you're exercising and eating great and you're gaining and gaining and gaining. All of these things are things that happen in the realm of obesogen. So obesogenic chemicals are literally, I mean, they're out there and they're in our environment. And when the industry, so when you hear, you know, governments or agencies talk about the obesity epidemic and they're not bringing up obesogenic chemicals, to me, I find that a farce. And I went to the White House a couple years ago. I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember.
Invited to the White House. And I got up and I was saying that exact thing, you know, to Michelle Obama. Hello, your whole thing is about obesity, but what about the obesogenic chemicals that these children are having to deal with every day? Why do we have fat babies? Hello, you know what I mean? Like, and they kind of looked at me like, eyes glossed over, get her off, get her out of here.
Get her out of here. She's opening up a door that we don't want to go down because I mean, and if you think about it, there's so many, like you were saying, there's a class of like 16 of them, but it's a real thing. And as women go into perimenopause and menopause, which is my audience, is we are so much more prone to cardiometabolic issues and metabolic issues and insulin resistance and weight gain. I mean, there's a list. I'm in the middle of writing my book, and there's a list of like 15 different reasons, which those, you know, obesogens and other things, other chemicals that are part of that 15 are one of the reasons. So it's like, it's a serious issue that we need to take into account because.
Well, and the most important thing to understand about menopause is when you're going through menopause, your hormones are changing. And any time in your life that your hormones are changing, that makes you more susceptible to these type of chemicals. And so this is a time in your life when you really should be a lot more observant of what these chemicals are, maybe try harder to get rid of them, because when they come into your life, the word breast cancer could come into your life more likely. Those types of issues, your ability to lose weight, cholesterol, heart disease, all of those things can be compounded by hormone disrupting chemicals while you're going through the change. So, and in your life, you know, we're talking about a little bit about when is it the most important times in your life to be very to really focus on this is, first of all, when you're pregnant. That's the most important time because that's when permanent things happen. When a child is between 0 to 5 years old, because they don't have the immune system defenses as an adult yet. And so that period is when you really want to be just vigilant. And then when children go through puberty, that's the other time because they're going through the change, becoming adults. And then when you go through menopause, men and women. So those are kind of the most important times. So your audience is prime to be focusing on this almost as if you're pregnant again.
No, it's very important.
Right.
And that's why I wanted to do this, because I don't think it's a topic that is commonly spoken about in this phase of life. And I thought, I mean, who better than you to talk about it? So, all right, so continue.
Okay, so we've got low. Okay, so no one's getting pregnant right now because it's kind of the definition of it. But
well, no, some people can. We have a lot of women who are in perimenopause. I was actually pregnant. I got pregnant in perimenopause. So it's women in menopause who can't. But yeah, we have a wide audience of women who. So it's anyone really over the age of 35. So a lot of women listening may be trying to get pregnant or are currently pregnant.
So this makes it more difficult. And it lowers fertility for men and women. So for male fertility, their swimmers are just not very high quality anymore. So the more PFAS you're exposed to as a man, the lower your sperm quality becomes because it just lowers testosterone. And it's kind of like what happens is PFAS, or most of these PFAS chemicals, act as synthetic androgen in your body. So androgen are for men, so it's a type of testosterone. When a male body is so much less forgiving than a female body is, we actually luck out because we detox in all kinds of ways that those poor men can't. But when this synthetic chemical gets into their body's all like, well, we've produced enough androgen, time to turn it off. And so that's what happens to them. So it lowers their testosterone. It lowers all these things in their life that they need for virility, for, to feel healthy. You've got to have a lot of testosterone to feel healthy as a man, and so this just kind of makes that. Now, when we go to little boys, when little boys are born, this is linked to smaller penis sizes. You know, this is linked
Mm.
to the androgen distance between the anus and the testicles. So if, you know, if you've had a little boy, you know, and you've wiped there before, I have 3 boys, so I know all about this. It makes that distance smaller. And so
Mm.
there are physical things that happen. And then it makes total sense because in pregnancy, these things are happening at very specific times. And when chemicals start to get in that are hormone disrupting, bad things can happen, things can change. So that's the smaller penis size. You know, and testicular cancers come out of this, kidney cancer, endocrine disruption, just in general, and it disrupts thyroid function. So those are the
Yeah,
main things. There
big
are
one.
additional things that it does, but we could be here all day. Since the more
Mm.
they study this, the more they realize because of the ubiquitousness, the toxicity, and just the fact that it doesn't go away, it stays in the body. How do we get rid of these chemicals? At this point in time, there's only really one way to get rid of them that is backed by science.
Okay.
So what they did was they studied firemen because firemen are
Mm.
one of the highest, yeah, and
Exposed
unfortunately
to them,
firemen
yes.
are full of toxins because of what they have to deal with. So
Yes.
they were trying to figure out how do we lower the rates of PFAS in firemen. The one thing that they found that works, and this is going to depress you, is by blood and plasma donation. And that was pretty much
Mm.
it.
Really?
So they encouraged these firemen to do blood and plasma donations. And the more plasma they donated, the more their blood levels went down. Now, the question is, now it becomes an ethical question, is if you know you have PFAS on your body,
Well, I
why
was
would
just gonna
you?
say, could they clean it
That's what
up? Like, is that
everybody asks, because of course you would. But then my answer to you is 99.9% of people have this in their blood. So it is in
right,
everybody's blood. So
right,
I think
right.
it's kind of neutral. It's ethically neutral because until they start filtering the blood before they give to people or start creating like, you know, testing you before, there's nothing you can do about it. So everybody that is going to donate blood is lowering their PFAS in their blood as they're doing it. They may not know that they're doing it, but that is what's happening. So
How many
plasma.
times a year? So if anybody's listening who has a woman or a man in their life, or they are a firefighter, how many times a year should they be? Or I guess in general, how many
You know,
times?
I don't know the answer to
Mm,
that. I wish I
okay.
did. I think that would be a doctor to
Okay.
tell you that.
I'm
But
just
they did
curious, like
max
in the
out.
study.
They
Okay.
whatever the maximum was, they did.
Do
And
that.
there was
Okay.
some of them were doing blood donation while other ones were doing plasma donations. And that's why I know if you want to max out, do the plasma donations. That gets rid of the most PFAS in your body.
Plasma donation. And is there anything like there's nothing like I mean, I know this isn't according to science, but like maybe some of the natural like holistic ways, like what about something like charcoal, activated charcoal? Or what about are there other things that pull like upping your fiber content? Are there things that can help it along?
So as a woman, when you menstruate, you are getting rid of blood, and that is an automatic detox for you.
Hmm.
There are maybe a possibility you could be getting rid of it in a sauna, but
Mm,
there's no studies that
okay.
support this yet.
Right.
And
Okay.
trust me, they're trying. They're trying.
Okay.
It's just, I think what the answer is some people would feel better with certain detox agents, but is it the PFAS it's getting rid of or not? Different.
Don't
Because
know.
because this is in your blood and this is not in your fat. This is in your blood and your protein. It's usually toxins are built up in your fat. And so you can sweat it out and it's easier for you to be able to detox things out of your fat, or at least those are
Right.
most detoxing agents, but this is in your blood. So this is a different monster. It repels fat. So it's not in the fat. It's in your blood. It's in your muscle.
Mm, interesting. So what are so you said that you got tested. If somebody wanted to get tested to know what their amounts are, how can they go about that?
So there's actually a test now that you can get through your doctor. So if you talk to your doctor, Quest Lab has a PFAS serum test. It tests, I believe, 18 analytes, PFAS analytes. So we're limited as to what it can test. And this is the other thing that's the geez. We don't even know the particulars about what all of these 15,000 PFAS chemicals do because we can only identify maybe 100 of them.
Wow.
So we can only identify and test for maybe 100 and not even in our blood. In our blood, maybe you can do 40, maybe 60. But
if it's in your blood, chances are, I mean, you know, I'm guessing.
now why it's like a catch-22. In order to identify these chemicals, they have to create tests to identify them.
Right.
And we can only identify about 100, maybe 150 in a university lab, in a commercial lab, a really good commercial lab that specializes. Maybe they can do 100 in a university lab, like in my advisor's lab, he can do 150, no problem. But the government and the private sector really doesn't want more of this testing possible. So my advisor, Scott Belcher, he works, he actually has a super fund, and he's with, oh God, I'm going to say it's either University, North Carolina State or South Carolina State. It's one of the two. I'm forgetting off the top of my head. It'll be clear to me when we're done here, but one of those two. But he oversees a super fund site, and the part of what he does is he studies PFAS, and they have lakes that are right next to all of these plants that created PFAS, and so they've been monitoring these lakes. Here's what he does. He wrangles alligators, yes, alligators, out of the lakes.
Wrangles, okay.
Wrangles them out of lakes, anesthetizes them, gets their blood and a little bit of their like muscle.
Oh, wow.
And puts them back in. And he uses alligators to evaluate how we're impacted, because alligators are at the top of the food chain. They're very similar to us. They eat the things that eat the things that eat the things that eat the things. Right. And they're surrounded by these chemicals constantly, just like we do. So and their immune system is actually very similar to a human's immune system. So that's why they study alligators. And so he's been trying to get money to create a test that can identify Teflon, you know, all the floral polymers, which are the polymer PFAS. There's like monomers and polymers and all the plasticizers and microplastic PFASs. He's been trying to get money to do this. He can't get money. He can't get funding. Nobody wants this. I mean, it's in the supply chain. Like, I mean, the floral polymers are the vast majority of what you're going to find in manufacturing of food and beverages and personal care products, because that's what they use for a lot of like lubrications. And remember, we had Teflon pans and we chucked those out, but did they chuck all the Teflon drums in manufacturing and all the things that are nonstick to keep those things moving? No, they did not. So you're finding that in manufacturing a lot, but nobody wants to fund the money to identify these Teflon products or Teflon chemicals. So there's no way that they can study something for human health, or even if they can't even identify it. So this is one of the problems with PFAS is, hello, boom. So
it's everywhere.
When I tell you all of these issues, you know, these are based on the legacy chemicals, most of all, the ones that are not really produced so much, but are still in the supply chain because they don't ever go away, but it's based on legacy chemicals. So they're constantly creating new PFAS chemicals and adding to that 15,000 plus list every day, all over the global world.
Listen, coming from the world that you and I came from for so many years, I mean, for me, 25 years or 20 years, I guess, you have to ask yourself, you're like, why is it even allowed? Now, I know the answer, but I want you to answer it. Like, why is this even allowed? Why is there no regulations around it? Why are we know that they have, we know it's ubiquitous. We know that it's everywhere. We know that it's harming people. Why?
So, I mean, the system and how it's set up, I mean, oh my gosh, I can go through all of the issues about, you know, why my advisors go nuts. And actually, maybe I'll just go through the issues of how the lobbyists have set up the system in such a way that it goes against our health, but then it totally helps out all these companies. So
Leah, just quickly, we have listeners who are all over the world. So I'd love you to explain that. I know it's a huge thing in the US, but can you explain what you mean by lobbyists?
Okay, so a lobbyist is someone who is certified to talk to and advocate for certain policies with elected officials. And so those would be lobbyists. So it's like if you worked for the gas industry, they have people that are employed by the gas industry that are certified to be able to walk up and down Capitol Hill, go from office to office to office of these elected officials and advocate for the needs of the gas industry. And so companies all kinds of companies in the United States will have these lobbying firms that live in the capitals of each state and the federal government, so DC. So DC is full of lobbyists. If you go to DC, lobbyists would be, you know, the coach on your son's baseball team. They're your neighbors. That's what that entire city is full of. It's a city that's full of lobbyists. So you're going to stumble over people if you talk about lobbyists in DC. Sacramento for California would be the same. You know, any major city, any major city with a capital and a state would have lobbyists that live there. And they're very powerful because they have a lot of money. They're not supposed to give money to these elected officials. But what they do have the ability to do is they have the ability right now to raise money and make or break you when you're running for office. And so what they can do is they can create these organizations that will kind of like be next to a campaign, but won't interact with the campaign. So like, let's say there's a congressman and he's Republican or Democrat, it doesn't matter. He wants to stay a congressman, okay? So you don't want to piss off these powerful, really super powerful companies and industries, because then they'll raise money to get rid of you. And they can do that by finding another person to run against you and funding them behind the scenes in a way that is legal and getting rid of you. And so it's not so much that I would say they're handing money to elected officials. Yes, they can do that as well, but they're limited to how much money that they can directly give an elected official. And I don't think that those amounts have been updated for 20 years. So it's not a lot that they can give. So it's not like they're getting paid off directly. The threat is more about, this is a pain in the butt for me to have to deal with during election time, and all of the forces and money that will come in to unseat me during an election. You know, so it's more about those types of things. And also, I would say that a lot of these elected officials, they either agree or disagree. Everyone is kind of like, I ran on that, you know, on that theme. So if someone is very anti-environmentalist, so to speak, or doesn't like consumer issues, you know, we're very business friendly, and things are very much in a dichotomy in the United States. You're either for or against. There's very few middle ground anymore, like there used to be 20 years ago. Today, it's like you're for or against. I would say that, like, interestingly, in the Republican Party in the United States, they've gotten a lot more conscientious of hormone disrupting chemicals than they used to be. So this kind of like interesting new generation of Republicans, believe it or not, are far more conscientious of these issues. They're, because I feel like homestead moms of the country, and those people are very conscientious of these issues. So the new up and comers are more like this, but the old guard Republicans, they're just like, they'll flip you the bird and walk away from you. They don't care about any of this stuff. So it's kind of interesting. But in this world of environmental hormone disrupting chemicals, you actually, it's not Republican or Democratic. It's ironically, both sides have a lot to do with it. So when you lobby like a Democrat, because I used to worked with elected officials prior to me doing this, so I probably know more than the average person, but this was all California politics that I worked in. You would find that the Dems are more susceptible to hearing these things and passing them. However, the Dems have so many things that they focus on. This is just one little silo of a thing that may get pushed aside for other things. So, you know, someone who does environmental lobbying, like the Environmental Working Group and Consumer Reports, they have some great lobbyists on our side. They work and work and work and work and work so hard. And even in places like California, it is really difficult to pass things, you know, even when it's, you know, completely Democratic, because again, it's like, how many things are we going to pass this year? And you're just one on the list. And so because the Democrats are more of a coalition, they're not so much a party, they're just like a lot of themes together, kind of under one tent. It makes it difficult in different ways. So it's like the carrot on the stick, and you may chase the carrot and just never get anything done. So, and sometimes it's easier to, lobby Republicans because those new Republicans are more like listening more because they want the, people that are Christian and in churches and stuff. They're far more tuned into this than they used to be, or open to it, because they know, moms know from looking at the rates of autism and allergies and
Moms
just seeing
know.
what's going
Moms do the
around us. They're
research.
not stupid. Yeah. But this wasn't the case beforehand. So,
Yeah.
my mom's generation, forget it. It's not even in their realm of reality. But our generation,
Oh, yeah.
seeing what's going on, we're not stupid. So that's what I think has really changed in politics. So either way, so anyways, those are lobbyists. So lobbyists for an industry. So the chemical industry, as in all of these chemical producers, they have a huge lobbying force all over the United States in every capital. And so what they've done is, over decades of lobbying, they have created a system of evaluating chemicals that really doesn't work for us as humans or for the public health, but really works well for them. And this is,
it does work. You cut out. You said it does work well for them, is what you said.
It works well for them, but it doesn't work well for us.
Yeah.
And what they do is they limit the type of testing that you can do. So it's like the crazy, sometimes they limit the testing on, oh, none of this has been done on humans. So there's weird things like that, like, if there's all these studies that are done and they're done on animals and they're done on cell cultures, that's what you're kind of limited to do. And yet they'll use that as saying, you can't prove that this is based on what would happen to a human because these are animals, these are not humans. So that's like the first thing, the first step. And we can't really test on humans, right? You can't hand a child toxins, have them drink it, and then, test it. We just can't do that. Yeah. So that's some of the limitations. The other thing is this hormone disruption is happening to animals all over the planet, included areas. And so what we do also do, and i.e. as the scientists, is they try to look at what's happening to birds that are living in lakes that have high levels of DDT. So they try to do those kind of studies to kind of show this is happening to animals. This is also probably happening to humans, but you can't make A plus B equals C go. So that's another difficulty. A lot of these chemicals are linked to obesity, developmental disabilities, infertility, all that stuff. But it's really hard to prove things. So here's the crazy thing about what's recently happened. My advisor actually did the first human studied on humans, 100%. It was really difficult to get this approved by the FDA, but they absolutely did. And they did it on bisphenols. So BPA is what they did it on. And they did it by giving people a dose of BPA that they would normally get if they went shopping one day, because you're actually,
the receipt paper
exposed to a lot of BPA, right, when you're shopping. And so they were able to create a study where they had some people here and had some people here, and the people over here, they gave a ton of BPA, and it was normal, it was approved because this is what you would be getting. And what they were able to show is that these high levels of BPA are linked to your body going into like a diabetic kind of rage.
Whoa, that's crazy.
And that was one of the first human studies. He got a lot of flack for that, but of course, like, there's no other way to kind of like prove these things. So, and
he got flack by who? By the chemical companies? Like who? Oh, okay.
Chemical companies, by other scientists. I mean, you're basically
He's
studying
disrupting.
humans.
Yeah.
Right. We did not do anything on pregnant women, didn't do anything on children. It was adults. But it was kind of a really interesting to show, okay, this is happening in animals, but this is also happening in humans. Kind of to push the FDA to say, hey, look, let's take these 50,000 animal studies that we have more seriously. The other thing is what to understand is a lot of these levels of hormone disrupting chemicals, it's low doses versus high doses. So what happens is the government will force chemical companies to do high dose testing of these chemicals, right? So if you have, let's just say a PFAS chemical or something like that, they'll force them to do high levels of the PFAS chemicals. And they're more looking for how at what level will this kill you is kind of more what they're looking for. They're more looking for death, destruction, that kind of stuff.
The extreme of what it would cause, basically.
What they would call toxic. But what they're not looking for is hormone disruption, endocrine disruption.
The micro dosing of it on a regular basis for long periods of time.
This is not something that they're really looking at. The other thing is they're not really doing low dose testing at all. So what they will do is they'll do high dose testing, and then they will extrapolate what they think will happen at a low dose. And that's what they will say will happen at a low dose. But here's the problem. With hormone disrupting chemicals, low doses sometimes are more problematic than high doses.
Yeah.
And so you absolutely cannot predict what's going to happen at a low dose with high dose testing. And so that's kind of still how they're doing things. They're getting the findings from high dose testing, extrapolating what they would think at a low dose, and then going down here and going, okay, and 100 times less than we think it is. But they're not doing that kind of testing to find out what would disrupt hormones, and definitely for a lot of these poisons and stuff like that. And so because people are mostly exposed to low doses and they're exposed to a soup of chemicals, they really have no idea how to say, this is happening because of this is happening because of this. You're exposed to a toxic soup of low chemicals. So it makes it really difficult to test things, to prove things, And the other thing, here's just a little stuff of what's pesticides, for instance.
Actually, before you go there, I just want to ask you one quick question. Actually, it's gonna blend well with the pesticides. Can you just explain again, because our audience may not be familiar with what an endocrine disruptor is, and then obviously you'll go into pesticides from there because they go together.
So your endocrine system is all of the systems that interact and deal with all the hormones in your life. And hormones are in so many different places, from your thyroid to your gut to all these different things, and that impacts everything in your life. And so when you're going through menopause, your endocrine system, your hormone system is literally what you're dealing with right now as it's changing. You would probably be able to tell me more about all the different systems and organs and stuff, because I forgot all the systems, but literally all of the systems that have to do with processing hormones is endocrine. So when you think of endocrine system, that's your hormone system. It's the same. So it would probably be easier if I said hormones as opposed to endocrine.
Yeah, keep it simple, and how they're mimicking hormones in the body.
And they absolutely mimic hormones. And hormones vary throughout your lifetime, and right now during menopause and as you're changing, things are in total flux and they're totally changing, and they're very vulnerable to these types of changes and situations and chemicals.
They mess with them. Yeah,
when you mess with them, absolutely. So that's a pretty simple way to do it. So
pesticides.
When we're talking about pesticides, so this is just to give you an idea of understanding why why the government allows these things and what the lobbying has done. For instance, with pesticides, people talk a lot about glyphosate, which is Roundup, weed killer, which is also a hormone disrupting chemical. When the government evaluates pesticides, they only evaluate the active ingredient. So they're only evaluating glyphosate. They're not evaluating the whole formula. Glyphosate is like the equivalent of the tomato in a spaghetti sauce. Now, in that spaghetti sauce, you have oils, you have spices, you have all kinds of other things that make it taste good or what have you. The same kind of idea is true in a formulation of pesticides. You have these things called adjuncts, which are added to the pesticide, to the active ingredient, to make it more toxic to the plant so it uptakes it and does its job. So when the government looks at pesticides, it only looks at glyphosate, for instance. It doesn't look at all the other chemicals that are in the formulation that are put there to make it more toxic. And so they evaluate and approve things based on the active ingredient only. And that is set up purposely so that these chemical companies don't have to do testing for all the different formulations that they have. If they have that one active ingredient and they put it in 40 products, they don't want to test all 40 of them, even though they're different. They don't want to have to do that. So these systems have been set up so that they don't have to spend the money. They don't have to do all these additional things. They don't have to do the safety testing. And even if they did the safety testing, it would be at high levels, not low levels. They wouldn't they wouldn't look at hormone disruption. They would look at toxicity and how does this kill you?
So unfortunately, we, the people, are actually dealing with the repercussions of all of this. And
and then one more thing. the testing methods that they rely on are actually very out of date. So it's kind of like the testing methods look at really high levels of these chemicals, doesn't go down to the possibilities, right? So you can test little tiny like traces of chemicals, but they don't require that. So it's kind of like the idea with that is if you wanted to go out and see the universe, right? And you walked out into your backyard and you wanted to see the stars, you wouldn't grab your binoculars to look at the stars, right? Because that would be crazy. You would get a really big Hubble telescope to look at the stars to be able to make that evaluation.
Right.
But what the government is doing is relying on binoculars to
Right.
make determinations of things that they really need the Hubble telescope for. So those are some other things. And then the last thing I would say is they have this mantra about dose equals the poison. And you hear that all
You hear
day
that
long,
all the time. Yeah.
all day long, right? So dose equals the poison.
All
So the idea
amounts
is
are
to make it
fine.
small.
You know, it's how much you're consuming. Exactly.
But that absolutely is not relevant with hormone disrupting chemicals, because a lot of these hormone disrupting chemicals at tiny doses are more dangerous than higher doses. And that is just the reality of what the independent scientists have found through all of their studies. And yet the government still has it in their mind, dose equals the poison. This is a theory from 1538 that we're still kind of programmed to keep saying. And every time I see a Instagram video trying to debunk anything that we try to do, it's like, oh, dose equals the poison, and I'm like, dude, that's like from 1538. We've learned a little bit more since then, so it's
the
kind
old
of like
programs.
silly. Right.
So
okay, those are all the reasons why this would be happening, in addition to the
why
money.
it's allowed.
And then also there's a big difference between the United States and Europe. The difference between the United States and Europe is most of Europe has socialized medicine. So if they make mistakes, they have to pay for them. So Europe is more likely to ban and restrict chemicals that they think are linked to problems that they're going to have to pay for. In the United States, private citizens pay for most of the insurance. So the burden is on us. They don't really have the same they don't have the same like issues that Europe would have. And so therefore they're kind of focusing on, consumerism and the economy versus what the individual would have to deal with. So if that makes sense, that's a lot of
it makes total sense. Okay, so now let's move on to what we can do. So as a consumer, we have the power to purchase what we want with our dollars. So this is a way that we could really make a difference in terms of limiting our exposure or minimizing or reducing, whatever you want to say, our exposure to these PFAS chemicals. So what are some of the things? Now, this is where your investigations come in and what you have done. Leah has done the work for us. So you don't really have to think too much when it comes to purchasing certain things. And you'll see, we're going to put a link below to her website. You will be blown away in terms of like the investigations, the length, what she talks about. She talks about good, okay, not good, best. Like she gives you literally a breakdown of products. So what to buy. And you use the pan one. And you know what? I should have looked at your investigation on pens because I recently bought one and I was looking at the chemicals and they're like, it's PTFE free and all of these frees. And then I brought it home and my son used it and I'm like, oh my God, this smells like chemicals. Like there's definitely something in there that they're just not saying. They just said that they didn't have those 2 or those 3 chemicals in it. So tell us, and I don't want to make that mistake again. And for all of you listening, I don't want you to make the mistake and you don't have to spend hours doing the research because Leah did it for you. What are your investigations?
Okay, so we have 26 PFAS investigations, 26 categories that we've gone through where we have done, oh gosh, I probably have sent 2,000 different products to the lab and had them tested to be able to tell you what is best for your family and what is not based on spot checking. So just to put this out there, we're only testing one product. We're not testing the whole line. We're not usually not testing more than one because honestly, I can't afford it. So I would love to be able to do that, but I can't. So have that in mind. It's a spot check in a time. So we don't know what the whole totality is, but we know what, when I tested, boom, what we saw.
Okay.
So there's a lot of things in your life that I would start focusing on right away. Number one being your dental floss. Okay. So
yes, big one.
The very most popular types of dental floss are full of Teflon. And I mean full full.
And those are the glide. So if they glide through your teeth really well, then you know that it's
heavy,
coated.
right? With literally a type of PFAS.
Yeah.
So dental floss, that's a really big one for women. The other really big one for women is your makeup. Anything that says
Mm.
waterproof, long lasting, stuff that if it sticks on your skin, it probably has a type of PFAS in there. And makeup, we have found specifically for women, is a big daily exposure. So go to my site. We've done over, I want to say 150 product tests there. That's one of our largest ones. You can go in and find the makeups that are the best and the worst. What we have found is not every category, every brand is the same. So some brands will have clean mascara, but other things were not so clean. And so we've been able to make that easy for you because some people like one particular brand, so they're only going to buy this or that from that brand, and they'll go to other brands for buying other things. We've tried to make that really easy for you.
Amazing.
The other thing I would do right away is look into your pantry and look at all of your nonstick pans. If it's nonstick, chances are, it's probably made of Teflon or PFAS. If it's ceramic, a ceramic nonstick, that's a little bit better, but it's also pretty bad because the nano ceramic that are in those pans are linked to major gut issues that have come up. And so there's a lot of stuff going on in Europe where they're trying to get this out of Europe. And then it's kind of getting dumped over here because those chemical companies are like freaking out that they're losing ground in Europe and Asian countries, and they're dumping it in the United States.
Oh my
So
God. And
don't
probably Canada too, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So we've got all kinds of cookware stuff to help you with your investigations. Another place that we found that was an interesting is your clothing, jackets. So if you have rain jackets or different types of jackets that you have, those types of things would have me more likely to have like a waterproof chemical in them. We
The
also
anti-wrinkle stuff. Like, what about those? Oh,
anti-wrinkle, anti-stain, and if they're promoting the fact that
right.
it would avoid grease, water, it's guaranteed they have those chemicals inside the clothing. The part that we don't understand is how much of these chemicals are getting into our skin, but we do know that PFAS gets into the skin.
Can you
So
wash them off? Like if you're washing those clothes, will it eventually get less and less?
we don't know the answer to those questions. Now, I'm sure it would over hundreds of washes. I'm sure it would be less and less because the stain would be more likely to appear. But, if it's a stain resistant marketed product, it's got a ton of this in there. And so there's a lot of options on my site with jackets. The other place that you probably never thought of is yoga pants. We actually found PFAS in the crotch of yoga pants. And
Oh
so
my
I
gosh.
was just testing all these athletic pants. I first started testing the pants. Like I would take samples of like where the thighs are and stuff like that. And I was getting non-detect. And I sat there and I thought to myself, wait a minute, that's not where I would put it. And then I told the lab to start testing the crotch, and whoa, all of a sudden,
Why are they putting it
where we
there?
found
Just
it.
so it's like what?
Non-stick, scent. I mean, I think they're trying to get rid of scents,
Oh
and they're
my
trying to
God.
get rid of liquids, and what I mean? We got our periods. We're constantly, stuff's coming
Right.
out constantly. They're working. And
Wow.
so you can tell brand from brand where I would test the crotch and test the leg, and the crotch would have it. And so you're like, dang, a lot of that. So go to our site, and it's yoga pants and athletic wear.
What
You
about
are,
bedding? What
huh?
about bedding? What about bedding? Because you're like lying on your pillow all night or,
We do have
sheets.
bedding investigations as well. So you can find that is, I mean, we've done so much testing, it's not even funny.
Right.
Your contact lenses, that's another place where I did
Mm.
not see this coming. But there are different levels of PFAS. I actually, right now, what we're doing is that we're actually putting this in a journal. So what I've done that I have on the site, we've doubled that testing and gone to a lot more brands, and tested a lot more brands, and we're putting that into a scientific journal. So I can't post that on my site until this is all done. It takes a little bit longer, but that is coming out. But I will say that there are definite levels that you will find. And if you go to my website, if you wear contact lenses, it's very clear to you brand to brand, product to product. You want to like try to avoid the ones that are the highest, grab the ones that are the lowest. And the lowest ones are more contamination than they are being purposely added. And so you'll see that the ones that are contaminated, that's probably better where you want to be versus we're so high it's intentionally added. That's where you want to avoid. And we try to make that really easy for you.
So, Leah, if somebody wants to learn more about you, they can go. We're going to put a link to your website below, but how else can they find you? Are you know, I know you're very active on Facebook. Are you still very active on Facebook through your group? You have
Yeah, we
a
have a
group.
group and it's really active. And I spend most of my time in that group. I think we like
Amazing.
15,300 women.
Yeah,
And
it's amazing.
we only accept about 10% of the people that apply. So we're very, very picky with who we let in. And we just want to make sure that you're a real mom. You're not like someone who's just trying to get into my group to spy on us, because we have a lot of people that do that, which is crazy, but it's constantly happening. Yeah, so we kind of look into who you are, but if we accept you, it's a very loving,
Oh,
supportive
it's a great
family.
group.
We've got
Yeah.
both
I'm in the
sides of the
group.
political aisle represented. We're really non-judgmental, and everyone there is just really helpful, and that's kind of how we are. We're a sisterhood.
And you
So
don't allow any toxicity, which is I'm going to call out. You don't allow for it. And if anybody is, they're out. So
yeah,
there's no
people start
bullshit.
toxic as in mean. If you're mean to your sisters, boom, you're out. And that's what I
Yeah.
mean. Like we don't want everybody. If you're a good person and you're
Yeah.
supportive to other women, we love to
Yeah.
have you. If you're kind of a toxic personality, you're not gonna you're not
You
gonna
don't mess
last very
around.
long.
No, she doesn't mess
I
around.
don't. Well, I've been doing this for 17 years, community
Yeah.
management for 17 years. I know what works and what doesn't, and I don't apologize for it anymore. So, this is just the way it is.
Oh, I
My
love
own
you.
highway, baby. I'm doing all this work. Y'all are just gonna be on
I
the
love you. I honestly, I do. I love you, Leah. Like you're just who you are. And, thank
Can't
you for being
apologize. Yeah.
thank you for being my friend for so long. No, it's amazing. So on social media, sorry. So Facebook. So tell say the name of the group.
Mamavation.com is my website where you'll find all the investigations. And then you can find our Facebook fan page, Mamavation. But I spend most of my time in my group. So look for our private Mamavation group, apply. I'm also on Instagram. I don't spend a lot of time on Instagram, but we do our, people are always watching for our investigations on Instagram. And I'm barely on Twitter anymore. I used to be a Twitter celebrity back in the day, but I barely spend any time there anymore because it's just, it's gotten crazy over there. So I went over to Facebook and hang out with the moms all day.
I love it. Well, thank you for doing this, Leah. Thanks for opening up our eyes and helping us make better decisions.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on, friend. I miss you.
I know. I miss you too. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Leah. Now, I know that was a lot of information to take in, but I'm hoping that you're able to walk away with a few really good tips on how to make healthier choices for you and your family. If you enjoyed it, please share it because the more you share shows you care. And please, I would be very grateful if you took a moment to write a review for our podcast. Because when you write a review, it actually tells the algorithm that you're enjoying the podcast and it sends it out to more people so that we can help more women going through perimenopause and menopause. As always, I know there's a lot you can be doing, but you chose to spend your time with me. And for that, I'm grateful. I'll see you at the next interview.